A simple and effective way to differentiate your platforming game from the rest of the crowd is to find a unique way for the player to interact with the environment. Of course, developing a platforming game with just the ability to run and jump while avoiding enemies and hazards comes off as a bit bland and uninspired. Even some of the pioneering platforming mascots understood this, which is why interesting ways to play with the world the player character finds themselves in was a subtle yet fun way of adding some spice to the simple goal of making it from point A to point B. Mario breaks blocks with his fists, which can potentially net you some coins, a power-up, or even a secret passageway. Crash Bandicoot bounces on crates that are littered throughout the environment, many with different properties which can propel Crash higher, net him bonus tokens, or can potentially kill him if interacted with in the wrong way. But out of all the companies to understand this play with the environment, SEGA is the one that took the concept and ran with it the most. Plenty of other people have raved about how satisfying it is in the classic Sega Genesis Sonic the Hedgehog games to roll or spin dash down a hill and jump at just the right moment to reach a shortcut or a secret room with rewards like extra rings, elemental shields, or special stage entrances. Using the twisting roller coaster levels to help you maintain your speed in interesting and satisfying ways is why the classic Sonic games are so much fun for me to go back to, even though I've religiously replayed them multiple times, like every single year. But in 1995, Sega decided to take the idea of the player interacting with an environment and aimed to make that the core focus of a brand new platforming game. And the result is perhaps one of the most unique games of its generation, and without a doubt, one of the most fun. At first, you would think Ristar is pretty unassuming as a mascot platformer character with how he controls. He has only one default walking speed, which itself is kind of slow, and his jump doesn't have nearly the higher distance as Sonic's or Mario's jumps. Ristar doesn't even have any power-ups throughout the game to enhance these abilities at all. On the face of it, Ristar looks to be dead on arrival, but the moment you press any button that isn't jump is when things start to get particularly interesting. Ristar's signature gimmick is his stretchy arms, which allow him to grab pretty much anything in the environment. The usage of the move isn't immediately clear, but just from playing the first level, you'll start to understand just how versatile Ristar actually ends up being with just this one simple ability. Ristar can't collect extra goodies like lives or extra health without grabbing them first. This may sound like a limitation, but it allows Ristar to collect items he otherwise wouldn't be able to reach. He doesn't jump on enemies like most other platformer characters do to defeat them either. He grabs them and headbutts them in order to knock them out. Ristar can also grab walls, which at first seems rather unhelpful, but then you discover that every time Ristar grabs a wall and headbutts it, he gains a little bit of extra height. You then realize that this Ristar, this platforming character, doesn't even need platforms. He can just use his signature grabbing ability to get where he needs to go. This one simple gimmick transforms an otherwise unremarkable game into one where it feels like you're always discovering something new with the ability solely from interacting with the environment in unique ways. Ristar will end up grabbing a whole bunch of things throughout the game, but very rarely does the function of whatever he's grabbing become confusing or obtuse. It's almost always immediately clear what needs to be done with whatever he's grabbing, which is great for a platforming game where the goal is to keep things simple and to get to the end. Ristar can swing on these poles suspended in the air, and it will launch him if he lets go at a strong enough speed. If you let go and Ristar is spinning at max speed, Ristar will blast off like a shooting star, eliminating any enemies he dashes into, as well as allowing him to reach places he wouldn't be able to otherwise. Oops, did I say earlier that Ristar couldn't power up his speed and jump capabilities? Looks like I was wrong. Once you discover how the poles work and you start seeing enemies themselves suspended in the air, you also discover that Ristar can swing off of them too, allowing him to cross hazards and discover hidden goodies. It won't be long before you start encountering challenges which have you use the ability in quick and inventive ways. For example, you'll encounter levels with floors that bounce you super high and super fast, but if you need to slow down in order to reach a certain part of the level, a quick grab of a wall will give you the pause you need to reach it. You'll also encounter challenges where you'll need to be careful with what you grab, lest you miss what you were aiming for and end up grabbing a hazard instead. There's so much you can do with just this one simple idea that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that Ristar is slow or can't jump very high. He's just as acrobatic and versatile as any other player in the platforming genre. The quick reflexes and timing skills you'll need to overcome some of Ristar's trickier platforming sections leads to a game that is easy to learn, but difficult to master. As cliche as that sounds, it's the perfect phrase to describe Ristar's gameplay. Because while the first two planets you encounter do a good job at easing you into the mechanics, the remaining levels certainly don't mess around. This game can actually get pretty tough, and will demand that you understand how to use Ristar's grabbing ability to avoid hazards and deal damage to enemies without dealing damage to yourself. Extra health pickups are few and far between, and while the game will end up giving you plenty of extra lives and continues, you're gonna burn through them pretty fast if you're not careful. Each of the levels in Ristar also include various alternate paths, encouraging exploration and further interactions with the environment. Your reward for exploring these stages tend to be extra points, health pickups, extra lives, the typical platformer stuff. But you can also access a variety of bonus stages. The bonus stages, which I might add, you have only one chance to complete. If you fail, that's it. There's no way to retry short of starting the game over. The reward for completing bonus stages isn't massive though. There's no alternate ending you achieve for collecting all of them, so at least you're not massively penalized for either missing them or failing them. But it is a special challenge for the Ristar hardcore to tackle. And challenging they are because these stages will test your understanding of Ristar's grabbing ability. Some of the later bonus stages don't have any platforms at all, your capacity for success resting solely on how precise your timing is with grabbing the environment to reach higher places. Bosses in this game also get pretty creative and fun, and definitely rev up in challenge as you go, just like the regular levels. During these bosses, you may also start to notice that whenever Ristar headbutts something, there's a brief window of time where he is impervious to damage, something that you can use during these boss fights to your advantage. But then again, if you fish too hard for your grabs in an attempt to get that invulnerability, you may just end up playing too recklessly and taking too much damage in the process, so you have to play it smart. Weaving in and out of boss attacks with Ristar's limited moveset and then going to town once you've found your opening is an exciting and addicting challenge. These boss stages also have cute little environmental intros which build the mood and atmosphere of each fight before they begin, sometimes they themselves having hazards to avoid. The stages in Ristar in general are also intricately detailed and colorful. You'll be hard-pressed to find a Sega Genesis game that looks this good. The enemies you encounter throughout the levels are so expressive and well animated. Their designs look dreamlike and endearing, but are still all clearly threats, what with their serious, angry game faces they give you before attacking. Likewise, Ristar himself is probably one of the most expressive characters you can find in this generation of video games. The only game character I can think of to come close to matching him is probably Earthworm Jim. This is due in part to Ristar's size. Ristar is a bit bigger and takes up more space on screen than your average platformer character. Or at least his face. His face is bigger than most. This allows his face and expressions to be easily readable. Designed by Yuji Uekawa before he went to work on the redesigns of the Sonic cast for Sonic Adventure, Ristar is a super endearing protagonist to play as, due in part to his detailed animations and his cute mannerisms. Ristar has unique idle animations depending on which environment he's in, a fun detail which makes the player feel like a part of the world. And of course, these cute idle animations even factor into a boss fight later on in the game, because this game just couldn't resist being even more endearing than it already is. The cost of having Ristar's face so big and expressive is the fact that there's not much space to see hazards coming sometimes. There will inevitably be moments where Ristar will get hit by obstacles you couldn't have possibly seen coming in time, and even more moments where a leap of faith will lead you right into a hazard. Couple that with health pickups not being particularly common, and yeah, it's easy to say that a lot of your deaths in Ristar may not feel like entirely your fault. Taking your time and focusing on precision rather than speed is a good idea for new players. This type of learning curve is nothing new for SEGA games though, and if you stick with it and learn the best ways to avoid hazards and maximize the usefulness of Ristar's abilities, you really feel like you're getting good at Ristar faster than you would with something like Mario or Sonic. And the cherry on top of it all is the absolutely phenomenal score. Composer Tomoko Sasaki, who would later go on to compose music for Nights into Dreams, creates a soundtrack here that is so good, I'm fairly shocked it's coming out of a Sega Genesis. You'll have tracks that get you pumped and giddy for the adventure ahead. Followed up with more atmospheric tracks that might even be better than the ones before. My favorite songs in the game are definitely the Planet Sonata and Planet Freon tracks. Ring Rink in particular is my favorite track in the entire game. It's so serene and playful, building the tone of the level perfectly, while also having a melody that gets stuck in your head almost immediately. Simple controls that are fun to mess around with, highly detailed sprite work that helps the game feel surprisingly contemporary, levels which mix exploration of the environment with experimentation of the game's mechanics, boss fights which test your knowledge of those mechanics in frantic and fast-paced ways, and music that is so good that even if the game was complete crap, I still would have considered the experience to be worth it. It really makes you wonder why SEGA has never attempted another crack at Ristar with any sort of follow-up, especially with so much still on the table for potential additions to the gameplay. I feel like there are still so many good ideas to use with this gimmick. Like, what if Ristar can control both of his arms independently of each other? What if Ristar's base platforming controls were expanded to include a run button? What if Ristar could grab on to bendy objects in order to back up and then let go to slingshot his way through a level? What other interesting ways could Ristar interact with his environment to create more fun and unique platforming challenges? It's hard not to feel a little disappointed at the fact that there has never been a Ristar sequel that explores these ideas, and probably never will be. At the same time though, in this day and age where each video game IP is expected to be expanded into large brands with multiple games accompanied by merchandise, TV specials, and other forms of supplemental multimedia, it's refreshing to have an idea like Ristar stand out entirely on its own. Perhaps Sega was disappointed with how Ristar sold in stores, as it was released in an era where all eyes were on the 5th generation of video game consoles, what with their advanced 3D graphical capabilities. Or perhaps Sega figured that while Ristar wasn't perfect, it did everything it set out to do, and did it remarkably well, so there's no need to build on it, simple and pure as it already is. Okay, let's be real here. It's probably the former, but I think the latter interpretation is just as valid. As it is, Ristar stands as this unique flash in the pan, a brief spark of creativity that doesn't need a massive series behind it to prove its merits as a top-notch platformer, possibly one of the best on the system it released on. Knowing that we'll probably never get to play anything else like it is certainly sad, but it makes the wonderful game we do have all the more special. We may never get a sequel, but with a game this good, honestly, who needs it? But maybe we will see this shooting star blast across our screens again someday. Who knows, crazier things have happened over at SEGA before.